How many games will the Celtics win this upcoming season? We'll talk about new projections right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Thanks to Blockbuster brand, it's holiday season. Drop Drew in the mix, and 3 from KP. No, we not on the Knicks. Flushing competition like Al on Giannis. Juice and Big Deuce, still Beantown's finest. Banner 18 going up in the rafters. Watch the C's game in Locked On after. Karalis on the breakdown, clutch like a tip from D. White on the breakdown. John on the mic, documenting domination. Matter pen a back bay, it's all C's nation. Rain and J's, how we started, raising business, how we finish. Locked On Celtics pod, home of the winners. Peace.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I got you covered every Monday through Friday. This week, next week, and then August, September, we slow down. We get into 3 days a week. We're still podcasting, though, more than anybody else. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Watch the show on YouTube, get into that comment section. I'm John Karalis. If you're new to the show, I used to play. Now I'm covering the Celtics as a beat writer for Boston Sports Journal. I've also written this commemorative book celebrating the Celtics championship win. It's called Built Different. Buy it wherever you find your books. It's in New England at places that you go, Walgreens, Sam's Club, BJ's. It's all there, so go check that out. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Go ahead and download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase of last-minute tickets. The win projections are out, and I'll go through all of those later on. I'll get into the Miami Heat. Maybe the Miami Heat should reconsider what they've been doing the past couple of seasons. We'll get into the Celtics challengers, and we'll get into, to start, the Celtics win projection, which is at 58.5 wins. So the Celtics at 58.5, it's right about where you'd think the win projection would be for the Celtics. Last season, they won 64 games. That was a little bit of overachievement, we'll say. Let's look at the top four here. 58.5 for the Celtics, 53.5 for the Knicks, 52.5 for the Sixers, 50.5 for the Bucks. So somewhat tight, but you can see more separation between the Celtics and the rest of the pack. All of these are brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel has put these out. So we're using FanDuel's numbers, and the 5 games between the Celtics and the second team there, the Knicks, it's about where the Thunder in the West, 56.5, are from the Timberwolves, 52.5. So there's a 4-game difference. So the Celtics are seen as a little bit more dominant, I guess. They're given that, I guess, deference that, hey, you won the championship. You've proven that you can win a lot of these games. I don't think predicting 60-plus wins is generally where a sportsbook wants to go. You got to remember that they're trying to get bets on both sides. They are trying to get you to say, you know what? I do think it'll be more than 58.5. They won 64 last year. I am going to put $50. I'm going to open up my FanDuel app. I'm going to put $50 down on the over. Why not? And you can do that. But then there are people who are like, well, 64 wins minus a few for the Porzingis injury, minus a couple because the Celtics won't maybe push quite as hard early on. You're going to play some of the end of bench guys a little bit more. There might be a couple of losses baked into that. So you go, okay, 64 minus, 4 or 5. Well, that gets you down to 59, 58.5. That's a tough number. Maybe you take the under thinking there'll be back-to-backs that they'll lose early. They might coast a little bit more. That January might be a little bit tougher. They got to 64 wins this past season because they didn't ever lose more than 2 games in a row. That's kind of an important element to this. I'm going to say the Celtics might lose more than 2 in a row this upcoming season. Again, think about what goes into 64 wins is a lot. 64 wins is an amazing season. You just won a championship. That feeling of, okay, we know what it takes. We're not going to extend ourselves now, whenever now is. Is it November? Is it January? Is it February? Is it heading into the All-Star break? Is it coming out of the All-Star break? Whenever the Celtics might say, we're not going to overextend ourselves, they might try new things. They might rest Tatum more. They might rest Jaylen more than they did last year. All of these things come into play. So when we're looking at what the Celtics are going to be, obviously 58.5 wins is the most in the NBA, 2 more than the Thunder. That's consistent basically across all the sports books out there. A couple have them at 57.5, but at 58.5 on FanDuel, it's right. That's about right for the Celtics. If they win 58 games, I wouldn't be surprised. A 6-game drop-off from the year before, for all of the reasons that I said, I don't think it's out of the question. But at the same time, Joe Mazzulla is super competitive. Jayson Tatum is super competitive. There is an element of guys are going to relax a little bit. The pressure is not going to be there. Maybe some of these games just come a little easier. Maybe a few of the games that okay, so you say, all right, they'll lose a couple here and there that they won last year, but maybe a couple that they lost, maybe a game to the Nuggets, maybe a game to the Thunder or the Timberwolves. Maybe they win those games because they're just playing a little more free. They're playing a little more relaxed. And those are the games that they're going to get up for a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit of a different vibe. So that could counterbalance that. We haven't even looked at the schedule. We don't know if it's going to be home heavy or road heavy. How many back-to-backs are there going to be in November, December before Porzingis gets back? Are the back-to-backs going to be piled up towards the end, and you're going to see Porzingis in some of those? It's going to be, there are going to be other factors in there. So 58.5, do they get there? That's a tough number. It is absolutely a tough number. If I'm going to sit there and predict 58 wins, that's right on the number. And this is why they're so good over there. Most of these numbers, you're like, okay, yeah, that I can see that. I can see why. And they would never pick over 60 because everybody would take the under, and that would naturally bring the number down anyway, because they would start lowering the number until they start getting the equal bets on the other side. So I think a lot of Celtics fans are going to throw their money on the over coming off of that championship season. I think maybe some skeptics, or maybe people who consider themselves realists, will say, you know what, I'm going to take the under just because of all those reasons. Either way, I expect the Celtics, at 58.5 wins, that's everybody expects them to have a tremendous season. They brought everybody back. I think when Vegas is kind of on board and they didn't lose anybody, so you look around, you go, okay, we are aware of what this team is capable of. They looked so good last year. They made it through with relative good health for the most part. And these guys are all young for the most part. I can absolutely see why they'd say, you're running it back. We're running it back with the biggest win total in the league. Let's look at the rest of this group in just a second, because I want to see how close are they? Are these projections indicative of how close they really are to the Celtics? That's coming up in just a minute. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time, the place to go for last-minute tickets to things like Major League Baseball. They're an authorized ticket marketplace of the MLB, plus concerts, comedy, theater. The closer you get to these events, the closer you get to first pitch, prices tend to go down. So open up that Game Time app and see what the prices are. You're probably going to save up to 60% off buying these last-minute tickets. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals or zone deals where you pick the section, they pick the seats. All in pricing, you toggle that feature and you get all the prices up front, so no surprise fees at checkout. You get panoramic seat views so you can know what you're getting into. The lowest price guarantee. If you find the same tickets in that section or row for less, you're going to get 110% of the difference. All of these make sure you get the best price on these last-minute tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, Redeem the code Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA. I talked about these exact same win projections, these same win totals with Jake Madison on Locked On NBA. We did that before this show, so we got into the league as a whole. We focused a lot on the Clippers, the Lakers, and the teams out west because the teams in the East, I feel like, are pretty accurate. So check out Locked On NBA as a supplemental podcast to this to get the bigger picture. We talk a lot about the Atlanta Hawks and teams that are in the chase for Cooper Flag. And I'll get into more of my Miami commentary in the next segment. I started it over there. We're going to finish it over here. Let's get back to the top 4 projection here. Celtics again at 58.5. Knicks, Sixers, and Bucks all within 3 games. Knicks at 53.5. Sixers at 52.5. And the Bucks at 50.5. It's an interesting kind of order. The Knicks and Sixers essentially even. 1 game is not a big difference. I think the 5-game spread tells everybody the Celtics, we expect. FanDuel says the Celtics are better. This is the better team. Clearly, this isn't a close race. This isn't 54.5 to 53.5 or 55.5. The 5-game spread is, I think, indicative of, I mean, the Celtics won the East by 14. I don't think, obviously, it's going to be a 14-game lead. The Knicks and Sixers did get better, and maybe the Celtics do come back down to earth a little bit, just naturally, because short turnaround and all the stuff I talked about in the first segment. But it's obvious that 5-game spread might as well be, a 7, 8, 9-game spread in the East. The FanDuel believes that the Celtics are a significantly better team. They put the Knicks ahead of the Sixers. Sixers obviously got Paul George. The Knicks with, I think, regular season, there's more, they bake a little bit more effort into the regular season for the Knicks just because Thibodeau, just because the Knicks are generally a hard-working, tough regular season team. Jalen Brunson isn't going to relax at all. You expect Julius Randle to be back and be healthy. Mikal Bridges adds an element there. So for the Knicks to be right there at 53.5, obviously that's a nice big total. It's the 3rd best total in the NBA. The Thunder are 56.5, then the Knicks at 53.5. So that over-under, that puts the Knicks pretty high up, above the Sixers, above the Timberwolves, above the Nuggets, above the Bucks, above the Mavs. That's, I think, there's a lot of respect being shown to the Knicks. I do think the Knicks are the Celtics' number 1 competition in the regular season. Those games are going to be tough. The Knicks are going to be really amped up for those games. They're going to be really into those games. Let's be clear. Those regular season games for New York are going to be their most meaningful games. The fans are going to be crazy. Every game in New York is going to be insanity. The Celtics are going to have to be ready. When we say New York's best punch, they're going to be ready for an incredible punch from the Knicks all season long. This is a measuring stick for the Knicks. They probably feel like the way the playoffs went last year, they weren't representing themselves at their best. Everybody was hurt. Obviously, Randall was out. If they're 100%, if they're healthy when they play the Celtics, they're going to want to show their fans that they measure up and can beat the world champs. And they will win some of those games. I don't think the Celtics are going to sweep the Knicks. The Knicks are very good, and the cohesiveness and the desire and just the physicality, they're going to win some of those games. They're going to win a lot of games. I might take the over on the Knicks. I might put them at 55 for this upcoming season. They won 50 last season, and I think they can top that by a few. So those are going to be very tough, and Boston's going to have to be ready for that. The Sixers at 52.5, I think is right. Obviously, that's a big difference from this past season. And obviously, the health of Joel Embiid is going to be the big thing, and the health of Paul George. But the Sixers have a claim to a challenge at the top. I don't think they're going to be the top seed. I really think it's Boston's to lose by a good amount, but I think the Sixers are a top 3 team for sure, because I don't trust the Bucks at 50.5 wins. That top 4, I think that's the right order: Celtics, Knicks, Sixers, and Bucks. Now the Bucks did make a couple of changes, and that could change how some things go for them this upcoming season. They're at 49 wins last year. For all of the problems that they had, they still were almost a 50-win team. Embiid, if he plays, I think the Sixers might be a candidate for the under at 52.5. They might be a candidate for the under, just because you have to be careful. You have to be careful with Embiid. No more, don't worry about his candidacy for postseason awards. Just sacrifice his postseason awards. He has to do it at this point in his career. He has to understand it's winding down faster for him than it is for other players at his stage of the career. He's not going to play till he's 40. He doesn't have a ton of time left because the injuries just keep piling up. He plays slower and slower. He plays further and further away from the rim. He's not dunking on anybody. He's taking a bunch of jumpers. He's very effective at it. He's very effective at grifting and living at the line and all of that stuff. But he plays a different style that it's not as physical. It's not as demanding during the regular season. And that stuff has to be addressed in terms of how many games he plays. That is going to hurt the Sixers. They got Paul George. They obviously, Tyrese Maxey is a star level player, superstar level player, almost, maybe not quite, but almost. They might be able to carry the day. That's one of the questions we're going to have to answer this upcoming season with the Sixers. But without Embiid, and I think they're going to have to play a bunch of the season without Embiid just to preserve him for the playoffs, that number might be depressed a little bit. The Bucks are an interesting question because you've got Doc Rivers starting, with his starting fresh, with his own, full staff, with his own playbook, a summer full of preparation, kind of like we were talking about with Joe Mazzulla a little bit coming into last season. There's a possibility that can help things along. A couple of moves that they made, maybe they win a couple more. 50.5 wins might be a little on the low side. So maybe the Bucks win 52. Maybe this flips. Maybe the Sixers are 4 and the Bucks are 3. Maybe the Sixers want to play the Celtics before the conference finals because they think they have the matchup with Embiid against Al Horford, who's aging, and Porzingis, who's not that big, and who, we'll see what his health is at that point. The Sixers might want to play the Celtics earlier because that's when Embiid might be fresher. So that could be a part of their planning, and that might depress their win total. So Knicks maybe a little bit more, Sixers maybe a little bit less, Bucks maybe a little bit more. So that if I'm opening up FanDuel, that's kind of how I'm looking. The next group, Magic, Cavs, Pacers, Heat. Do the Heat really want to be in that mix? What's this next? Because this is the group of potential first round matchups for the Celtics. Let's talk about that in just a second. FanDuel win projections next after the Milwaukee Bucks. Orlando Magic at 47.5. Cleveland Cavaliers also 47.5. Indiana Pacers also 47.5. So that's your 5, 6, 7, and then the Miami Heat at 44.5, and the Hawks at 34.5. So very, very steep drop after the Miami Heat. The Hawks, the Raptors, Hornets, Bulls, Pistons, Wizards, Nets. This is an element here that we also have to take into account. I'm looking at these numbers, these win projections. Look at how many Eastern Conference teams are down there at the bottom. Let's just pick it up from the Atlanta Hawks at 34.5. These are all teams with less than 40 wins projected. Hawks 34.5, Raptors 30.5, Hornets 29.5, Bulls 27.5, Pistons 25.5, Wizards 22.5, and Nets 19.5. Mixed in there are Western Conference teams, Blazers, Jazz, Spurs are the Western Conference teams, but that tells you a lot. The worst of the worst teams are almost entirely coming from the East. That's going to pump up some numbers at the top. Although, some of these teams tend to take, some of the good teams tend to take those bad teams lightly. And here we are. You get some of those tough losses that are, everybody's going to cry about. So in that group, the Heat are definitely the 8th seed. I question. So the Magic, they want to win. The Cavs, they want to win. Pacers definitely want to win. They want to build on success from last year. And they're all at 47.5 wins. Now, the Cavs 148, the Magic 147, and the Pacers 147. So that's all right in line for where they were last year. And I think that's correct. I think those teams are all kind of in line for that 47, 48 win season. So I'm not touching those over-unders at all. I'm not touching them. They're probably going to be in that same order somewhere. And if Philly climbs up to the top 4, like last year they were a playing team for obvious reasons, Embiid was hurt. That means the Cavs, Magic, Pacers, and Heat are all probably going to be in line for the Celtics in that first round, which makes this is going to be a tough matchup for them. Orlando's a big physical team. We saw the Pacers and how unpredictable they are. That's going to be a tough team. The Cavs, if they're fully healthy with a new coaching staff, Atkinson's a pretty good coach with a renewed commitment. Maybe Darius Garland has, they've talked things through. If he has a good season, they can figure some things out. That'll make them a much tougher opponent in the playoffs. So that mix coming up for that bottom half of the East, that's full of difficult teams. Miami, I question, do you really want to be a play-in team again? They won 46 games last year. They are projected by FanDuel at 44.5. So that 44, 45 win team, if that's just above 500. How often do the Miami Heat really want to be in that situation? How often do you want to be a play-in team? How many years are you going to waste of Bam Adebayo before he gets sick of being a play-in team? Now, you had that incredible run a couple of seasons ago. That was complete outlier, complete luck, shooting luck. Congratulations, you did it. You made it that far, but the shooting had to be out of this world. And even one of the guys that was out of this world, you lost 2 of them from that season. It's hard to catch that magic again. If you've got Jimmy Butler all season long, he slows things down. If you get rid of Jimmy Butler, I don't know if that helps or hurts. If they move Jimmy Butler, does that hurt the Heat, or does that help them play at a style that they are happy playing with? It's a real question. I think the Heat are a real interesting question mark. The Hawks, we talk about this on Locked On NBA. The Hawks at 34.5 are a real interesting question mark because they would be a play-in team. The Raptors and Hornets are all potential play-in teams. The Bulls are a potential play-in team. Those are all teams that want to lose. They want to, I'm telling you, this is the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. You got to be all in on the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. Miami actually has an opportunity somehow if they can fall far enough where they can go from finals run to, still pretty good team. They're still pretty good. 45 wins, above 500, still pretty good. They've got some pretty good players. If they could somehow dip and get Cooper Flag within a year or two, there's a real potential that they could jump right back up into the top 4. So it would be in Miami's best interest to find a way to dip a little bit. Somehow, some way, figure out a way. Get that Miami Heat culture stuff out of your head. Get the Pat Riley ego, the Spo ego, all that stuff. Get it out of your heads. Tank and find that. That's my objective advice, unbiased advice. You should tank and go for Cooper Flag. If you're on the borderline in this year's NBA, just dip below that borderline somehow. Get into the draft. Find yourself a good player. Don't worry about it. Why are you going to challenge Boston and New York and Philly and Milwaukee? Why are you going to challenge those teams? Orlando's on the come up. The Pacers are a super interesting team. The Cavs are pretty good, and they've got Donovan Mitchell and Mobley and those guys with a different coach. Maybe there's an element there that makes them even better. So why would you want to be a fringe team? Why would you want to be just on the higher side of the fringe? Just tank, just dip below it, get into this draft, get a good player, and then regroup next year. It's not a big deal. Now I can see the Hornets wanting to get into the play-in tournament, and maybe, how fun would it be? How fun would it be if Charles Lee gets that Hornets team to 30-something wins, they get into the play-in, they win, they face the Celtics in the first round. Celtics versus Hornets in the first round, Mazzulla against his old assistant coach, a couple of the other guys from the Celtics staff from last year, they're against them this year. That would be kind of there'd be a lot of people talking about, wow, Charlotte has, if anybody has the blueprint to beat the Celtics, it would be Charlotte, and they have some decent players. And if they had gotten that far, some of those players might have had good seasons. And so that's an interesting potential team to watch for. I think the Raptors should just and forget about it. Hawks are weird because they don't have their own draft pick, but they should probably trade Trae Young and figure it out from there either way. And so I think the Hornets of that tanking group should pop up. The Heat should just stop swimming in mediocrity, dip below, and come back later. And we'll see how the Pistons, Wizards, and Nets all shake out. The Bulls don't know who the hell they want to be. But bottom line, the Celtics are going to be pretty good. Their competition, we know, Knicks, Sixers, Bucks, they're going to be pretty good. Those would be tough. I think the Knicks are the best competition for the Celtics. Any matchups against Magic, Cavs, and Pacers are going to be tough. And I'll take a first-round matchup against the Hornets just for the fun storyline. So that's it with the win projections. Go check them out at FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of Locked On and Locked On Celtics. So go check them out. As always, gamble responsibly if you're going to do that. If you're new to the show, would love it if you subscribe to the show. Hit that button on whatever app you use. Get onto the YouTube page. Let me know what you think there in the comment section. And if you like the show, if you're a longtime listener and you make this your first listen every day, now I would love it if you shared the podcast and told everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.